Thank you to today's Game Day Instant Analysis sponsor, Meredith Schlosser, one of the top real estate agents in Los Angeles with over $900 million in sales and more than 295 five-star Zillow reviews. Meredith was recently recognized by Wall Street Journal within the top 1.5% of agents in the nation. You can learn more about Meredith and her team for rentals, sales, and purchases at www.meredithschlosser.com. Also check out her business Instagram at Meredith Real Estate. And now, here's Game Day Instant Analysis.
For USCFootball.com, Connor Morrissette and Shotgun Spratling were here at Notre Dame after a disappointing 34-24 defeat for USC. Shotgun, Lincoln Riley, after this game, said he wasn't good enough calling plays, and USC gave up over 300 rushing yards tonight. You put that together, you get this disappointing defeat. Your initial thoughts?
It could have been worse for USC. I didn't think that Notre Dame's game plan was very good. They could run the ball down USC's throat at will, and some reason they decided with a freshman quarterback, let's throw it every once in a while. Let's throw it when we're down on the goal line. He throws an interception. So USC had some extra opportunities in this game. Missed field goal from Notre Dame, missed extra point from Notre Dame, and USC couldn't get it done. They weren't physical enough up front defensively. They didn't fit it well, is what Lincoln Riley said. He said, compared to Illinois, where they got pushed back, this game he felt like there was more stalemates, but they just were not good enough in their assignments. And then he faulted himself for the offensive play calling, particularly the trick play call. He said it was just a stupid call. Stupid call.
That's it. Elaborate.
Yeah, and then he said that he was bad. He wasn't good enough for the team on that the 2 fourth down calls that he made, as well as the trick play. So you throw those things together, your play calling is not good enough, and you get the ball run down your throat. You're not going to win a rivalry game. You're not going to win it in these conditions, rainy conditions, and everything. Notre Dame was able to get what they wanted on the offensive side, and USC couldn't do the same on the other side.
The 315 rushing yards allowed after giving up 258 last season against Notre Dame. So that's the big story, that D'Anton Lynn continues to struggle stopping the run. All the USC defensive players, Lincoln Riley, that's the main takeaway. But I totally agree with you. The fact that USC couldn't take advantage of Notre Dame's mistakes, like a hallmark of a good football team, which USC looked like a good football team last week against Michigan, is taking advantage of bad football. And you nailed it. The missed 31-yard field goal for Notre Dame. The horrific pick from C.J. Carr, one of the worst I've ever seen. A missed extra point. 8 penalties for Notre Dame for 96 yards compared to just 1 accepted penalty for USC. 2 kicks out of bounds from Notre Dame. They made a ton of mistakes, not running the ball once on their last drive of the first half, Notre Dame, when C.J. Carr was struggling and they were averaging, I think, over 10 yards per carry at that point. They didn't run it once, even though they had some timeouts. They were not a smart football team tonight, and there were times where USC was smarter. But what you're looking for, especially in year 4 of a new regime, a very highly paid regime with Lincoln Riley making as much as he is, like, can you take advantage of bad football? And USC wasn't able to do it tonight. So the run defense is disappointing, but that is really disappointing to me as well. You'd hope in year 4 that if your opponent, even if they're pretty good, is making a lot of mistakes and they're doing some stupid things, you could take advantage. Lo and behold, USC couldn't do that tonight, and that really disappoints me, I think, the most.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned all the mistakes that Notre Dame made on special teams, and yet they still won special teams because they had a 100-yard kick return. Probably should have been a couple holding calls on that play, but they weren't called. Runs it back, and that was a huge momentum switch, right? Yeah. There's 2 times in this game where USC seemed to steal the momentum. They score on that long Jacoby Lane touchdown to, it hushes the crowd. They take the lead. Early in the game, they take the lead by driving it right down on Notre Dame. But both times they give up explosive plays immediately. Literally the next play, they give up an explosive play, or maybe the 2 plays after that for the run that Jeremiah Love had a 60-something yard run. He finishes off their first drive. And, I don't understand why Notre Dame, I think USC maybe had, it felt like 5 plays where Notre Dame ran the ball and didn't get 4 yards. Like, if you're running the ball and you're getting 4 yards almost every time, there were a couple of tackles for losses in there. But otherwise, when they ran the ball with their running backs, they were getting whatever they wanted. So USC couldn't build on the momentum and force Notre Dame into a situation where they did need to throw the ball and force them to put the onus on C.J. Carr. That's something they did last week against Michigan. They forced Bryce Underwood, be a freshman, hey, make your freshmen go beat us, not your good running backs. They couldn't do that against Jeremiah Love and Jadarian Price. They got whatever they wanted in this game, both on the ground. They had a couple of nice catches as well and runs after the catch, and then the 100-yard kick return as well for Price. So, yeah, USC got beat in the trenches. They couldn't run the ball themselves. They've been really good at that. I think King Miller had 18 carries for like 70 yards. Not a terrible job, but 3.6 yards per carry. They couldn't stop the run on the other side, and that's been the difference in this rivalry recently. Is that Notre Dame, and the reason why they are a college football playoff contender year in and year out the last 5 years or so, is because they can beat USC up in the trenches. USC doesn't have that yet. They're still not there yet, and they've gotten better pieces as it's gone along. The offensive line's been really good this season up until this game, and I think that Notre Dame had their number, and the rivalry is currently on hiatus, I guess, until a contract gets done. But does USC really want to play this game? They keep getting beat the way they get beat. Maybe the coaching staff's looking at it like, maybe we don't need this game on the schedule if we're going to keep beating like that. No, you got to get better. Get better in the trenches. You see what is beating you. You got to make the adjustments. You got to get better. And hey, they're trying to do that through recruiting. They're trying to do that with other things. But like Lincoln Riley said, it wasn't that they were getting pushed back this game. They were just not. They were making too many mistakes with their fits and everything else. In the run game. So a lot of things that have to be cleaned up. They'll have a bye week now to try to do that. And they still have, if Clay Helton was the coach, he'd say we still have everything in front of us. But they are 3-1 in conference. They can still play well in the Big Ten and potentially make a run. 2 losses now doesn't eliminate you from the college football playoff. But basically, USC would need to win out, and there's going to be some tough games on the road that they have to still do. I think we just saw once again, USC's not tough enough on the road.
Why do you think that is? Is getting beat in the trenches in year 4 acceptable? I thought they took a step forward last week against Michigan. I think we can agree that they did. And then it's a backslide tonight. Different kind of game than that Illinois game, of course. Different kind of game than that Michigan game. But why does this continue to keep happening? And in year 4, is this something that USC fans are just going to have to be okay with?
I mean, last week I thought USC won pre-snap a lot. Yeah. So they were out-leveraged. They were able to beat Michigan before the play was even started. This week was about, okay, you need to actually physically move people out of the way. They couldn't do that. You needed to be able to hold your ground. You need to be able to fit the runs the way you're supposed to. They weren't able to do that. So I think it is disappointing. And Lincoln Riley said that, the way that they had played well last week, to not be able to follow it up, the inconsistency. And that's what you see from this team. And it's a team that is good and has moments of brilliance, but can't put it together consistently to be great yet. And what will it take for that to happen? It's tough to figure out a single thing that is a solution, but they just got to get tougher, and especially on the road. You got to be tougher. You got to find a way. Elements are against you. The fans are against you, and they were right there. They took the lead and then gave it immediately back. They just haven't been able to hold the momentum in these games. And similarly at Illinois, they take the lead, give it right back on that final drive. So the defense did get a couple of stops early in the game. I think that was partly on Notre Dame's play calling, deciding to throw the ball with C.J. Carson to run it more consistently. They got a 3-and-out in the second half. I thought it was really big, gave them an opportunity. And the defense got a couple stops when they did have some early turnovers. When Mayava had a turnover early, the defense was able to get a stop because of the missed field goal. And so that one didn't hurt them. But they had 3 turnovers in the game. They had a terrible trick play call. It didn't make much sense.
Especially after getting 42 yards on 3rd and 9. They got some momentum back after they had lost all the momentum on the Price big return. Like, stick with Mayava. Things are going well. And then the play to Lemon. Lemon, of course, will want that one back. A very tough break for him. He knows that he can't make that mistake. That was a tough one.
Yeah, and you look at it, USC stars on the offensive side struggled. They had some bright moments, right? Jacoby Lane, obviously the big touchdown, but he had 2 drops. He had a touchdown drop right before half that I'm sure he would want back. Was it the rain? Was it whatever? He had opportunities to make a couple more plays that didn't happen. He got held a ton in this game. He got a couple of PIs called. He created some PIs as well in this game. So it was an up and down game for him. Mekhi Lemon held to 4 catches for 76 yards. I thought Notre Dame had an interesting game plan against him. They shadowed him a lot with their top cornerback, and then they did some different things to bracket him and whatnot. But USC was still able to find him on a deep over route that, like you said, a 40-something yard gain. And I don't know if maybe they thought, okay, they're going to be focusing on Mekhi Lemon, so now's the time to run the trick play after it. But, that was a 3rd and long, and they pick it up. And
great protection on that play, too. The offensive line, that was probably their best play of the night.
Yeah, and like I said, again, momentum. And you give it right back. in a different way. So they just never were able to capitalize and build the steamroll effect of the momentum to take the crowd out of it, to get the other team worried. They never were able to do that because immediately, as soon as they would have a big play, they gave it right back immediately. So many times, Lake McCree had a fantastic touchdown on the opening drive, and they give it right back with the long run from Love. Mekhi Lemon, like we just talked about, that one, Jacoby Lane with a touchdown immediately. Each time, immediately giving the momentum back, so they never were able to build it. And that makes it that much more difficult in a tough environment to win when the elements and everything else are going against you. And the referees, I didn't think were very good. They were awful one way to begin with. They were off the other way after that. And then they were kind of off at the end. A lot of reviews that didn't need to have just things. So I know some USC fans will look at it and blame it. Some Notre Dame fans were livid at the referees. So I think everyone will go home disappointed in the refereeing tonight. But there's nothing that you can just individually point at. They just got beat. They got beat up in the trenches, and they couldn't do enough running the ball to keep Notre Dame honest, I think, which enabled them to do more creative things against Mekhi Lemon and Jacoby Lane. And they still were able to get some yards, but I think Mayava was
22 of 42, yeah. 2 touchdowns, 2 picks.
20 incompletions. He was under pressure, and that was the thing. A lot of people talked about how Lincoln Riley had been cooking, had been really doing well. Jaden Mayava, they had been really in sync, right? And I kind of questioned this week and talking to some people before the game is what happens when he gets pressure? And Notre Dame was able to pressure him, and I think that was a big difference on the offensive side as well. We saw the first time that someone has been able to hound him pretty consistently, and you saw it didn't work out as well. Still had opportunities, and that's probably the most disappointing thing of this is the opportunities they had that they couldn't take advantage of, and even when they did have those big plays, they just would immediately give it back.
No Wayman Jordan, no Eli Sanders clearly made a big difference as well. You needed your tough running back tonight to go up against the 2 tough running backs for Notre Dame. Not that King Miller and Brian Jackson aren't tough, but Wayman Jordan, that 4th and 1 that he picked up last week against Michigan, you needed some of that tonight, and USC just didn't have it. And then defensively, Shotgun, responding to something you said earlier. So after that Illinois game, the food poisoning, Kamari Ramsey's out, Gentry wasn't feeling well. Tonight, the weather, but there's no real excuse tonight. Tonight was an opportunity to show, after a really nice Michigan performance, defensively against Illinois, yeah, that was still a fluke. We're way better than that game. But then they kind of go back in the tank again. And just on the road, they just have a tough time stopping the run. That's been the case in both games. The secondary was probably a little bit better tonight, but Altmaier certainly diced them up 2 weeks ago. Why is this team so ineffective on the road?
Hey, no one plays better on the road. There's no team out there that goes and you look at their stats and you're like, oh my gosh, they're so much better on the road. That just doesn't happen. Everyone plays better at home. There are the travel, and you're traveling multiple time zones and all that. Have they figured that part out? Is that an issue? I don't know. It's just they have not been able to win on the road under Lincoln Riley. It's been consistently. They haven't been able to win a big game on the road. That still has not happened. Hey, they went to Purdue. Congratulations. But
Purdue, shout out today against Northwestern.
Okay. I shouldn't have bet Purdue on that one.
Me neither.
But, yeah, so I don't know what it is about it. I don't know if it's the persona on the team. They're trying to get more physical. They're trying to be tougher. That's something that has been something they've been actively working at with the players that they're recruiting, as well as just the overall mantras and stuff, and Tremaine Carroll and everything. It's just not happening yet. And maybe it takes just one breakthrough win. Maybe they win at Nebraska or they win at Oregon, and that becomes the moment that turns the tide as far as them on the road. They had opportunities to do that tonight. They had opportunities to do that against Illinois, but again, they consistently come up short in these close games on the road for whatever reason. They can't find a way to get over that hump. So then you start to wonder, does it become psychological for the group as a whole that, oh no, we're in that position again? Oh no. And you thought at Purdue, there was a couple of opportunities there for Purdue to get back in that game. You thought that was a positive for them that they were able to pull away at the end of that one. But they just haven't been able to get over the hump. And it's disappointing, I'm sure, for USC fans watching. I know it's disappointing for the team in there to not be able to get it done. Lincoln Riley, admitted he's disappointed in the way they did certain things today. Also disappointed in his own play calling and everything. Like I said, he had been cooking. He had been, calling great plays and everything.
First drive was great.
Yeah, and it was interesting, how they tried to attack what Notre Dame was doing against Mekhi Lemon, because he's been so good. They were willing to take one-on-one shots to Tanook Hines, to Jacoby Lane. Now they didn't connect quite on as many, and you wonder, if that was part of the game plan coming in early in the week, and then the rain that makes it a little bit more difficult, right? Just to catch those jump balls and different things like that. If that had an impact in how they tried to change what they were doing, but I think it goes back to the fact that they weren't able to run the ball consistently. When you're constantly in 2nd and 8, anytime you run the ball on 1st down, it just makes it that much more difficult. They did a lot of the things that we saw last year with running the tight ends flat that didn't make a lot of sense last year and weren't very successful in this game. They've had a little bit of success with Walker Lyons in that, but this game they threw to Jaden Richardson on a 3rd down in the flat. They threw to Lake McCree on 4th down. And you wonder, I think it was a 4th and 2 on Lake McCree pass. It was 4th and inches on the incomplete pass that they had to Lake McCree as well towards the end of the game. What happens if they did have Wayman Jordan? Because you've seen what he can do. He can make that first guy miss. I don't think they had confidence enough that the offensive line was able to get a push to be able to get it, and that's probably why that they, Lincoln Riley said it was an option for a QB sneak on that play, or to do it. I don't know whose option it was, but they decided not to go with the 4th and inches sneak, which Jay Mayava scored on against Notre Dame last year. So he's a big boy. You would think you would have confidence enough to be able to get inches. They were not able to do that, and you wonder if they did have Wayman Jordan, would they have called a different play there or not? I think the one positive out of this is that they've had all those injuries recently. They'll go in the bye week. They'll have a chance to heal up once again, but no new injuries tonight. So that was, I guess, is the positive to look at. As far as we know, at least, no one was in the tent, I don't think, all night. So that's a small piece of positivity to find out of this game. But just overall, just very disappointing the way that it played out. When you take the lead and then you just can't do anything in the 4th quarter.
Yeah. I think the most disappointing thing is when we've seen Lincoln Riley throughout his career, a lot of times he has to be perfect as the offensive play caller because his defenses, just for whatever reason, haven't been good enough. And it's hard to be perfect. You're not going to always be perfect. And maybe that's too high of a bar, but you have to be really, really good. And it's hard to be really, really good on the road against Notre Dame. Ideally, there would be more balance, but when you're giving up 315 rushing yards, you need to take as many opportunities as you possibly can on offense, and to have some of the mistakes that they had in this game were killer, where if you hold Notre Dame to 200 rushing yards, it looks a little bit different. So it goes hand in hand, but that's just a dangerous theme that I've seen going back to Riley's time at Oklahoma, where he's so great on offense, and we've seen the history, but if that's not perfect, a lot of time his defense just isn't good enough for whatever reason, and we saw that tonight again. New coordinator, but same kind of problem with him, and eventually as these performances continue to stack up, yes, D'Anton Lynn deserves some blame tonight, of course, but Lincoln Riley's the head coach, and this is a theme that we've seen too often in his tenure. Yeah,
it has been, and they had opportunities along with the 4th downs. They had to settle for a couple field goals where drives.
Ryan Sayeri, another positive. He was nails.
I was going to say that it was positive. In the rain, in a road environment, he kicks better on the road. It seems awesome. Like he loves the attention from the fans yelling at him and whatnot. But the fact that they had to settle, and that you had to go for 4th down, or didn't feel confident, or weren't able to pick it up, and didn't kick that field goal early. Could have been 16-14 at the half potentially. You could have had the lead at halftime. Does that change anything? I don't necessarily think so. But I thought one interesting thing from tonight on the defensive side, obviously trying to mix things up and try to figure out different things to do. The first half, they played almost exclusively in a 4-3 defense with 3 linebackers out there, something we saw last week.
Which worked so well, and then tonight it's kind of like, oh, maybe they should never run that again.
So the second half, they actually switched over to the nickel defense. So you saw Kamari Ramsey back at nickel, trying to attack a little bit more off the edge. We'll see when we rewatch the game how much was successful, what things were not a little bit. But, basically they just got bullied. They got bullied by their rival, and I don't know that there's much more to this game than that. They had opportunities and couldn't make the most of it. They had momentum, they couldn't hold it, but they just got bullied.
I think that's a good place to end. I think you're exactly right there, Shotgun. For Shotgun Spratling, Connor Morrissette, USC loses 34-24. Disappointing game to Notre Dame. We'll be back in LA tomorrow for Tunnel Vision, so check that out on YouTube. Thanks so much for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.